We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling and productive lives, now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. It's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the great pleasure of talking with Carolyn Torkelson and Catherine Maienau, women whose work I greatly admire. Carolyn Torkelson, MD, Adjunct Associate Professor at the University of Minnesota, worked at the Women's Health Clinic for 2 decades, providing holistic, integrative women's health. Dr. Torkelson co-chairs the Minnesota Holistic Medicine Group of 900 plus practitioners. She retired from clinical practice in early 2020 to write and consult on women's health issues. Catherine Maienau, PhD, Professor Emerita, DePaul University, has dedicated her career to mentoring women in their educational and life pursuits. Dr. Maienau teaches, writes, and consults on neuroscience and learning, and on various aspects of women and aging. She is co-founder and co-host of the weekly podcast, Women Over 70, Aging Reimagined. They also are co-authors of the recently published Beyond Menopause, New Pathways to Holistic Health. It is a wonderful book. And so I encourage everybody to go get it because it is really, really, just in getting started, I would say when I was reading it, it reminded me a little bit of, I was just ready to say it. What was the book that came out in the late 60s, early 70s? That was a blockbuster. First time ever that kind of thing had been put in print and sent out to us.
Christian Northrup?
Say again, please?
Christian Northrup? Is that what you're thinking of?
I'm thinking of the book, Our Bodies Ourselves.
Yes, Our Bodies Ourselves. We got that book and devoured it. And your new book reminds me for a little bit about that now for us later in our years. So it's just a wonderful book. So before we get started, actually, let me ask both of you, do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if not, why is it that you think that you don't? Whoever would like to start.
Well, I'll start. I'm Catherine. I actually do experience getting older in several ways. I guess one is getting older. I am much more confident in my own voice and what I have to offer. And I feel less like to do things out of obligation and more out of choice. The other side of that, though, is that I do experience getting older with some physical changes, anything from high blood pressure to some aches and pains in the mornings and maybe even in the evening. But I can deal with that with working out and following the advice in our book about good eating.
Right. How about you, Carolyn? Do you experience
Oh,
getting older?
yes, I would definitely say that I'm experiencing getting older. You know, the whole campaign about anti-aging, although it has some benefits, the truth is that I am getting older, and I think it does provide me freedom to, and it has, because I've retired, it's provide me more time to do the things that I really love to do. And then on the flip side is that, what do I experience? I maybe find myself being more cautious and less adventuresome than I was in the past. Certainly, my physical body isn't as strong, and yet I remain very active. But I've had to put, some limitations around what I have been able to do in the past, and what I wish I could do. But those limitations I think, are beneficial limitations. They're not a negative. It's just that I go back and say, I maybe am not as quite as brave and adventuresome in doing things that might be not as healthy for my body.
That's really interesting, Carolyn. Because both of you have said, in a sense, similar things, and that is what I find when I ask women that question. They many times will say, well, physically, yes, I have some of this and I have some of this, but other than that, I feel good. I feel me. I feel like I can do more. I don't have to pay so much attention to what people think and all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I really dislike the term anti-aging. I heard somebody once say being anti-aging is sort of like being anti-breathing. I was in a group the other day and somebody talked about they didn't want to get older. Sarah, don't talk about getting older and stuff. And I said, well, if you're not in favor of getting older, you must be in favor of dying. I need to not keep saying that because that's, but it's true. I mean, that's the alternative.
And I think embracing it really helps.
I do too. I think that embracing in whatever it is in our lives, embracing it helps. Whatever it is, just dealing with it. I am not kidding when I say I love your book. It is just a wonderful book. And I'm curious about, from your perspective, what need or problem do you think this book addresses? I have my own sense of it, but I'm really interested in knowing what the two of you think.
Well, Carolyn, you should probably go first since this was your brainchild. So,
well, I think there's kind of two focuses of this book. First of all, the first is we are speaking to postmenopausal women, those many years, 30 to 50 years beyond menopause, that no one really ever talks about. So, and postmenopausal women have unique healthcare needs. And these needs are often neglected or just not even recognized in the healthcare system. So we as women, we as advocates for ourselves, if we're going to embrace ourselves as we age, we really, we need to be our best advocate because no one else is really going to do it for us. So that is kind of the first layer of one of the purposes of the book. And then the second part of the book is that we are talking about integrative, holistic approaches to well-being. And when I left clinical practice, I really wanted to provide for women kind of a guide or a resource for women to learn how holistic integrative medicine can enhance your health. And we're not saying that conventional medicine isn't helping, but we really wanted to create a template for other healing modalities and other healing systems that could augment our bodies to do its own innate healing. Because that's what we want to have happen, is is our own bodies telling us what we need to do to be as healthy as we possibly can.
And to not get sick. I mean, I've used conventional health medicine, and thank goodness it's there, but it is designed to heal sickness,
chronic disease,
right? And so let's put at least as much energy into figuring out how not to get it in the first place.
prevention.
How do you see it, Catherine? How do you see what the book, what problem or mission it solves?
Well, I just echo what Carolyn said, but I think what you said to begin with, Sarah, about the mission of Prime Spark, that we're here to shine the light on conditions, situations that women confront as we age that tend to be overlooked, dismissed, and that we, as Carolyn said, we have to be our own advocates. Even my own experience with my doctor, who's quite wonderful, and I've seen her for decades now. I'm the one who suggests, I think I need a stress test, or I think I need my blood pressure checked, or because she sees me wonderfully, it's great. She sees me as a healthy person, which I, of course, strive to be. At the same time, I'm listening to cues in my body that I think need attention. And so I need to advocate for that and not feel embarrassed or like I'm being a hypochondriac or anything of the sort. And it's just, women need to be visible. We need to be visible in all kinds of ways. And certainly our health needs are critical.
Isn't it amazing that you've said this, that postmenopausal, we live almost as much life postmenopausal as we do premenopausal.
That's right.
And this may not be true because I'm not an expert at all, but the only thing I'm aware of with postmenopause is like the first few years.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the really difficult things that can happen, not to all women, but to someone. But then once you sort of get past that, even mostly past it, if not completely past it, there's nothing. There's nothing written about it.
That's right. Sarah, when we've had book signings and women walk by and they look at our book title and they go beyond menopause, they say, "Oh, I'm way beyond that." And we say, "Exactly. Come talk with us because this book is for you." And so even in our own sense of ourselves is that we're not visible.
Yeah. That since we don't know anything about it, there's nothing to be known about way beyond menopause.
Mm-hmm.
That just get on with it. I think that's fascinating. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
I'm going to say there's, emerging is more and more information about menopause, and that what you say, Sarah, about that time, whatever that menopause transition period may be. But after that, then we really fall off the map.
Yeah.
And we, in our book, our intention is really to address that time also, although one of the chapters is on the menopause transition. We certainly spend a lot of time talking about women's stories and women's experiences after and beyond that time.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad for the increase in looking at menopause, and hopefully it will translate into making an impact on how companies and organizations work better with their women employees during that time. But I never was so aware until I started reading your book of how I'd never heard anything about so much of this. I'd never heard any, so how did the two of you get together to do this?
Go for it, Catherine.
Okay. Well, this is a long story that I'll try to make as short as possible. Carolyn and I have been friends for over 50 years now. We met at the University of Minnesota. The summer before we graduated, undergraduate, we took a trip together. We did independent study projects in Mexico. And there we discovered Isla Mujeres, the island of the women. And it was totally unsettled mostly unsettled at that point. But Carolyn said that she was going to live there someday. And for the past 25 years, she and her husband have a condo there, and I get to visit every winter. So during those visits, we talk a lot about our respective professions. And I was in innovative higher education. Carolyn's in integrative healthcare, and the difficulty we have in being not in the mainstream and trying to bring both higher learning and holistic health into people's consciousness. And I began to listen to hear more about Carolyn's stories about working with her patients. And I thought, well, this is really, although I'm not talking with my students about health, I'm working with older women who are really trying to carve a new pathways for themselves and be good agents of their own learning. And so we thought, and then Carolyn had been saying she wanted to write a book. So I said, oh, well, I could help with that. And lo and behold, we became co-authors with Carolyn's medical practice, of course, in the lead. And I tell the story about Isla Mujeres because that was where we really, I think, our friendship deepened, and where we have such a passion for that place, and where we got to write a good bit of the book on location there. So that's my story.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder, Catherine, Isla Mujeres means island of the women.
Yes.
So what could be a better place to create a story about women, women as they age, and the beauty of women, and how we can carve new pathways. So.
And even though we've known each other for all these years, we've traveled and had a very close friendship, we'd never done anything professionally together before. So this was a wonderful opportunity to collaborate on something that means so much to both of us.
Did that collaboration go smoothly?
People ask that question, and it was like, a hand in glove. We really worked well, very, very well together. And I think we just strengthened our bond. Even though Catherine lives in Chicago, I live in Minneapolis. So we did a lot of Zoom calls. And of course, we did a lot of our work on Isla Mujeres. But we did our work often from a distance. And we think we've strengthened our friendship. Wouldn't you agree, Catherine?
I definitely agree with that. And I've told many people that I've collaborated on, books and articles, and I know Carolyn has with other people as well. This was by far the most gratifying, the most fun, the most, it was, it's tough writing a book, but the whole process was really enjoyable, and I learned a great deal from this woman. And I think part of it is because we each brought such different perspectives or different settings, and yet we share the same values and the same sort of aspiration for women as we grow older. So there were no conflicts, really.
That's really great. It struck me that it would be very sad if it was. I mean, I have friends who lived with somebody for a long time, then got married, and the whole thing fell apart. So I'm glad that didn't happen with this. So let's talk a bit about the book, because it is such a good book. You have the book organized into 3 parts. Describe the 3 different parts and why it's organized that way.
Well, I can give you just a brief overview of what the 3 parts are, and we can take it in pieces, Catherine, but really the book is organized into these 3 different parts. The first is speaking up for yourself. How are you your best advocate? The second part is expanding your health options. And what we do is we provide 8 different health conditions that are particularly amenable to integrative care. And they also illustrate stories about healing systems and healing strategies. Those 8 different conditions, let me just briefly list them for you. They're the menopause transition, sexual health, sleep, anxiety, fatigue, weight changes or weight concerns, bone health, and brain health. And we really try to bridge the gap between conventional medicine and other kinds of healing modalities. Then the third part of the book is about harmonizing your body, mind, and spirit through nurturing different aspects of your health. So those are the 3 parts. And Catherine, why don't you talk just a little bit about speaking up for yourself and advocacy?
Well, one of the things we realized as we were pretty early in the process of writing the book, and actually we got feedback on this, was that we needed to really make a strong case for women being their own advocates. And so so we look at that in a couple of different ways in part 1 of the book. And one of the ways is for women you really need to know ourselves. Who are we and how are we when we're involved in the medical system in some way? And those of us who are accomplished and competent in many aspects of our lives, does that person show up in the doctor's office? Not always. I certainly don't. And so we thought we really want to help women understand their voice and how to exercise their voice when they're advocating for their own needs. So that's basically part 1. And we also talk about the need to establish a relationship with your providers, healthcare providers, that is sort of a relational one, a mutual understanding and respect. So it's not the authoritative, I'm the doctor, you need to do what I say.
That's fascinating. That's a whole relearning for many of us, because
Yes.
I was brought up, the doctor said, the doctor knows, and just pay attention to what usually at that point he tells you to do, because he knows and he's right. And it took me a real healthcare crisis to learn to say no. And I love that this whole first part of the book is about that, so that women can learn to do that without having to come to a serious healthcare crisis in order to stand up for themselves. But that is a real relearning for a lot of us.
It is. In fact, the first version of that part 1 focused much more on women as learners and how we learn and how we grow and develop. And that's still there. That's still the underpinning. It's just that we've framed it more around advocacy, exercising our advocacy voice.
Right. That's wonderful.
And around that, I think an important piece is to be able to listen to your own emotional health and listen to your own intuition. I mean, we have been taught not to listen to our own body as it speaks, and maybe engaging in different ways that you can really augment that and listen to what your body is telling you, rather than always or often deferring to someone else's expertise. Because we ourselves have a lot of expertise.
And I don't know how many times after I went through my thing that I would say to someone, it's my body. It's my body. And that I always thought, that seems like such a stupid thing to be sitting here saying, this is my body. I mean, that's it. But it seemed needed to be said.
Right. Giving ourselves permission to really, really express who we are.
It takes a lot of courage, I think, too, especially how many of us have probably been raised, as you said, Sarah, that doctor knows best, and you're not to question, and you're to be compliant. And I don't mind being compliant if I understand exactly how that's going to help me.
Right. No, I mean, if something makes sense and I want to do it,
Yeah.
Isn't that, I hadn't even thought about this until you just said that, Catherine. One of my favorite shows on television was, that was Father Knows Best. It wasn't Doctor Knows Best. It was Father Knows Best.
Well, there's Dr. Kildare.
There was Dr.
Yes. So the second part are different situations or diseases or body states, or how do you refer to them? They're not really diseases. They're...
Well, in the second part of the book, we really, I chose conditions that often are not talked about when you go and see your primary care doctor or whichever doctor you choose to see. We don't talk about sexual health, do we?
No, I mean, I think that for most of us, number one, if anybody is involved in sexual activity as they get older, they don't talk about it. And for people who aren't, they assume it's not happening.
Yeah,
right.
Because you're old,
Right. So really getting in touch with your sexuality, who you are as a sexual being doesn't get forgotten just because you're post-menopause. And there are difficulties and there are challenges and there are rewards, but we need to talk about it. And if we can't, first of all, we need to talk to our partner, if we have a partner. And then if we have concerns, we need to be able to trust our practitioner to go and speak to that individual and ask them questions that are on our mind.
And if we can't get satisfaction doing that, we're seeing the wrong person.
Exactly. Or we need to ask that individual, then get me to the right person.
Right.
And so that is one chapter we think is really important. The chapter on anxiety and how anxiety can emerge as we age, and how we can employ different mindfulness techniques to help us with that. I think that's incredibly valuable.
So I didn't even know I had anxiety until Carolyn insisted that we have that chapter. And I thought, this is fine. This is for other women. But it really gave me insight into the kinds of anxieties that I carry with me and have over the decades. So it was a real learning. That was a real learning experience for me.
That reminds me, Catherine, that I was into menopause before I knew what was going on. And finally, a friend told me, I think you're in menopause. It's not only anxiety somebody needs to tell us about.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
We love, one of the things we did at the end of each chapter was have a Catherine's commentary. And so we could bring Catherine's voice as a woman reader of the chapter to say, oh my gosh, I never even knew anything about this. And I think that's a fun part about the book is Catherine's comments or commentaries, we call it.
I agree. And it makes it real.
It makes it real.
Makes it feel like you're sitting and talking to somebody and she's, you're just going back and forth about how you reacted to this book. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now what's the third part of the book again?
Catherine, why don't you fill it in a little bit?
Well, this is about, we started with the first part being advocates for yourself, self-care, and we wanted to kind of close the book with that notion too around nurturing ourselves. We really need to learn about self-nurturing. And so we look at it as Carolyn said earlier, harmonizing the body, mind, and spirit. A lot of the book is about body and mind. And so we wanted to bring our spirit and whatever spiritual means to anyone, which of course is different. So we thought, well, what are those key aspects of nurturing? And we certainly talk about self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, being radically kind to ourselves. And we also included a part about nurturing loss. At our ages, we're experiencing loss of many different kinds. Loss of family and friends, and loss of pets, and even loss of some of us, Carolyn alluded to earlier, our physical abilities or capacities. And so nurturing our ability to rebound from loss and rebuild is really key. Purpose, of course. Everyone talks about the importance of having purpose, and we do as well. So the last part is an invitation for women to kind of stand up for themselves and each other. And we have what we call a bold declaration about advocating for what we need and taking responsibility, and trying the holistic approaches that can be very beneficial to us, and keep striving for that goal to remain vital and engaged in life.
I think one of the things, Catherine, that we really found as we were looking at the nurturing component was not only, really being more patient and loving of ourselves with self-compassion, but we also realized the vital importance of nurturing community as we age.
Yes, absolutely.
That really stood out for us. That how do we create the kind of community that feeds our soul, that feeds us deeply?
I think that we at this point know several things that help us have a good life as we age, in all sorts of ways. And one of them is, I think, is community, that making sure that we have what you just described, Carolyn. And it's easy not to do that. It's easy to start turning inward and not focusing as much outward. And I am convinced that one of the things that we all need to do as we get older is continue to have younger friends. Because I think that brings a whole new perspective. I'm really in favor of some of the work that's being done with intergenerational communication.
Yes.
Because, I think it's both ways, to increase understanding. And Carolyn, I love what you said about, or Catherine, I'm not sure who said, getting used to loss and getting in touch with different kinds of loss. I was, just as you were saying that, what I was thinking of was that I realized the other day that I was not as comfortable anymore driving back from San Francisco to home, which is about 45 minutes to an hour, at night. Right? And I was sort of devastated to realize I was feeling that way. And I can make myself do it. Should I? I mean, if I'm that wary, I mean, is that something I really should keep? I mean, what do you think? And when we hit things like that, should we really try to push through it, or should we honor how we're feeling? Because it seems to me that then cuts off a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how much anxiety you want to live with.
I think that's a really good point, Catherine. It's so funny you say that, because that is one thing I said to my husband about 3 months ago. It was, it's getting dark so soon in November. And I had to go out at night. And I said, I really don't want to go out because I don't feel as comfortable driving. And it was like I felt myself almost collapsing, because I felt like an old person saying that. But so I recognized two things. You can push yourself through it. The other thing is my vision isn't as good. I'm just not as safe on the highway as I was before. So I think you really have to modify to some degree and yet we don't want to not go out at night because we can't drive.
Right. Well, I think one of the things, among many things that your book does, is make us realize we're not alone in a lot of these things. It's not talked about. We're not helped with it. And one of the things your book does is make it really clear that we're not alone. Mm-hmm. So just before we end, do you have any other projects in mind at this point, or is it just recovery time from this book?
Well, I don't feel like we're in recovery yet because we've been doing book signings, and we are doing programs in person as well as on virtually, and being invited on podcasts such as yours. And we're delighted to be with you, Sarah. So thank you. So I think we're in that phase now where we're looking, how do we get the messages out there to as wide a public as possible? And wouldn't it be great if we also could somehow influence conventional medicine, or at least some of the providers in that system, to be more open to what we bring and what we need?
One of the things we all could do is give one of these books to our healthcare providers.
Yes.
I gave one to mine. I don't know if she's going to read it, but I gave it to her.
Right. Good.
Yes. Yeah, I think promoting our book is really important. And it's not so much even about promoting ourselves, but I think what we're talking about is such an important movement for women. Well, and it's more for women, just for aging adults. And so a lot of that is done on social media. And it's kind of a space that I'm not as comfortable in, but it's one that I need to get more comfortable with.
Yeah, unfortunately, you probably do. Even kicking and screaming. But yes, that's probably true. Okay, well, that's our time today. Could you, I have a sense that people might want to get in touch with you. So could you each give the best way for somebody to get in touch with you if they would like to?
Well, for me, it's Catherine. It's probably my email, which is CMARIENA at DePaul, DEPAUL.edu.
Just do that one more time, Catherine.
CMARIENA at DePaul, DEPAUL.edu.
Carolyn?
But Sarah, I do want to mention that Catherine has the podcast Women Over 70. And it is you can connect that way, and it's such an important podcast.
It's so that's www.womenover70, then the number 70.com. And Sarah Hart is one of our advocates. So she is a guest. She's one of our podcast guests. So you can check her out there too.
It is a wonderful site. It is.
It is a wonderful site.
It's so full of great stuff.
You can get a hold of me on www.womenagingwell.org. Womenagingwell.org, and it's my website, and you can just get to me through that site. So thank you so much. Really, thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
thank you, everybody, for being with us. You can find out about Prime Spark Podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at www.primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guests, Carolyn Torkelson and Catherine Maienau. And don't forget how you can find them. And if you get confused about that, contact me at Sarah Hart at heartcom.com, and I will get you in touch with them. So thank you for being with us, everybody. Take care, spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark. to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.